Chapter 51, Seizing. This chapter is updated by Novels.pl. As the only millennial force of Thousand Sails City, the Monchai family truly had a frightening amount of influence. 3 days after Ryan paid a visit to Granger, the Gilded Rose was notified that the Alchemist Guild would seize their goods. A small, middle-aged alchemist who was about 40 to 50 years old came to see them. He stood at the entrance of the Gilded Rose, looking up with a condescending expression on his face. This wasn't particularly aimed at the Gilded Rose. This was the normal attitude of a member of the Alchemist Guild. Those of the renowned Alchemist Guild tended to have this attitude toward all the alchemy shops of Thousand Sails City, including the one of the flashing gold chamber of commerce of the past. In their eyes, even if these alchemy shops appeared impressive, they were only puppets of the Alchemist Guild. Without the Alchemist Guild's authorization, they couldn't even recruit one decent alchemist, because the Alchemist Guild had control over the entire industry. The survival of these alchemy shops could be decided by a mere word from the Alchemist Guild. Just like this Gilded Rose. The Hope Potion unveiled a few days ago had put the Gilded Rose in the limelight, but now, with just a word from the Alchemist Guild, it was suddenly faced with the danger of having their goods seized. Alchemist Merlin, what is this? Lin Yun had been at the Sage Tower for the past few days, so only the old butler was left in charge of the Gilded Rose. Hearing that someone from the Alchemist Guild had come to visit, he hurriedly went out to welcome him. But once he got to the lobby, the face of the old butler stiffened. 10 alchemists wearing black robes were sticking papers marked, seized, on goods that lined the shelves. Each time they stuck a paper on something, the alchemist taking the inventory would record it. And the one in charge of this was Alchemist Merlin, who the old butler had dealt with a few times. In the Alchemist Guild, Merlin was in charge of market supervision. When the Gilded Rose was reopening, the old butler specially paid a visit to this Merlin a few times so that the Alchemist Guild wouldn't make trouble for them. He even gave him a few generous bribes. At that time, Merlin patted his chest and guaranteed that the matters of the Gilded Rose would be his matters, and that if there was ever an issue, he would seek them out personally to resolve it before it became an official problem. The old butler never expected that a month later, Merlin, who had said those words so confidently, would be seizing the goods of the Gilded Rose. Please wait, this must be a misunderstanding. After a quick glance around, the old butler knew that something had gone awry. Flustered, he hurriedly stopped the black-robed men from sticking more papers while requesting help from the person he had bribed. Alchemist Merlin, can we have a few words? You can say what you want to say here. If it was before, Merlin might have still agreed to chat in private because that would mean that he might potentially receive some more profits. But this time, Merlin didn't even consider it and immediately rejected it. The old butler suddenly understood how bad the situation was, but he still kept a smiling face. Okay, Alchemist Merlin, can I ask why are the Gilded Rose's products being seized? Why is it being seized? Merlin snorted. Don't you yourself know about what the Gilded Rose did? Old Pave, your Gilded Rose is in big trouble this time. For the sake of our previous friendship, I advise you to not ask too much about it and to quickly help my people take the goods before explaining everything in the upcoming hearing. Don't think that you'll be lucky, the problem with your Gilded Rose is very serious. Hearing. This is a decision from above. Finding someone to plead for you is useless. Merlin rolled his eyes and then glanced at the progress of his subordinates. Deciding that it was too slow, he grabbed a few of the seals himself and stuck the papers on some of the goods while instructing his subordinates, these, and these, bring all these back for me. The only difference was that the goods that the black-robed alchemists had seized were goods that they had been told might be problematic, while the ones Merlin seized were all the most expensive items of the Gilded Rose. Merlin's favorite activity was closing down alchemy shops because confiscating the stock of an alchemy shop would bring in a large amount of income. Even now, the few goods he chose were worth a few 100,000 golds. If he brought them back to the Alchemist Guild, they would be personally processed by Merlin. And if some of the goods were damaged and had to be disposed of, that definitely couldn't be blamed on Merlin. Alchemical goods were very frail, so it was normal for some damage to appear, right? Then again, who could look into that? The shuttered Gilded Rose? At such a time, they would have to worry about their hearing first. Milan quickly looked around the shelves. Every expensive item that fell into his gaze made his face expose a hint of excitement and greed. 1 item, 2 items, 3 items. In a short period of time, 8 expensive items had been seized by Milan. But he still was not yet satisfied. His eyes turned toward the staircase to the second floor. Milan's intuition told him that the truly precious items were most likely in the alchemy laboratory. You, and you, follow me up. Milan pointed at a few black-robed alchemists and walked over to the second floor with them. But, just as Milan stepped foot onto the staircase, a soft sound echoed through the air. Before Milan could understand what had happened, he was ruthlessly sent flying. Fortunately, he didn't go very high. Thus, he quickly fell down. However, he landed face first. Who is it? Milan got up from the ground with difficulty, his face in a bad state. It looked sort of like a peach, with red and white mixed together in a mess. Who dares to sneak attack me? Have the guts to show yourself. Milan then saw his attacker come out. He was a thin, 20-year-old mage with a pale complexion who was dressed in a brand new black robe. He stood there with his right hand still raised after having cast Tornado Whip. You are the one who attacked me? Although the Alchemist Guild had always been relatively low-key, unlike the powerful Mage Guild, whose might shook the entire Thousand Sails city, it had the power to rule over the industry. The Alchemist Guild's members always had a feeling of superiority over everyone else, especially Milan, who was able to control the market. In Thousand Sails City, he could be described as harsh and unreasonable. Usually, the alchemy shops having their goods seized would have to sweet-talk Milan out of fear that they might be accused of some additional offense. But today, he was actually attacked with a tornado whip as he was about to inspect the alchemy laboratory. This was simply a humiliation. I am Mafia Merlin. Lin Yun didn't care about Milan's expression as he slowly walked out of the crowd and entered the lobby of the Gilded Rose, before stopping in front of the bloodied Milan. The Gilded Rose you are closing down just so happens to belong to me. Mafia Merlin? Milan was dazed. He then remembered that Loch Merlin indeed had a son named Mafia Merlin. But so what if it was Loch Merlin's son? Even if Loch Merlin himself had committed such an offense, he would have had to pay the price, let alone his son. You dared to do this to me? Milan stared at Lin Yun, his voice full of repressed anger. Do you know what you are doing? Do you know the consequences of interfering with the Alchemist Guild's market supervision? What consequences? Haha, you'll know about it after I bring you back. Milan waved his hand and his black-robed subordinates quickly surrounded Lin Yun. Capture this individual and bring him back. To dare to sneak attack me, such nerve. Understood. Naturally, this group of alchemists wasn't weak, as they had been sent to seize expensive goods, which could cause conflict. They were all at least 5th rank mages, and some of them had even reached the 9th rank. After hearing Milan's command, powerful mana fluctuations suddenly filled the Gilded Rose. How come it's so lively? But at this time, an aged voice came from within the crowd. The Alchemist Guild is carrying out official business. Unrelated people had better step back. Milan coldly sneered as his black-robed subordinates got ready to capture Lin Yun. The Alchemist Guild seems quite high-handed. Go back and ask Liss if he dares to make me step back. Leader Liss' name isn't something that Milan stopped mid-sentence. He suddenly felt that this aged voice was a bit familiar. Thinking of this, Milan couldn't help turning around. Then, his face turned deathly pale. Fuck. Solomon. At that split second, Milan felt as if he had been struck by thunder, and his eyes filled with fear. He looked at Solomon like he saw a monster appear. The expression on his bloody face was a mix of shock, fear, and loss. Milan almost wanted to cry. For some time, Milan's mind was blank. One thought kept appearing over and over again. How could it be Solomon, and what is he doing here? Chapter 52. Hearing. This chapter is updated by Novels.pl. This was Solomon, leader of the Mage Guild, master of the Sage Tower, The Solomon whose power shook Thousand Sails City for 20 years. Never mind a small alchemist like Merlin, even leaderless would be forced to remain respectful in front of this high mage. I just scolded Solomon apostrophe. As he thought about it, Merlin felt his legs weakening. What should I do? What should I do apostrophe? This was the strongest mage of Thousand Sails City, someone who had slaughtered the Blackwing bandits. In front of him, Merlin was a mere ant waiting to be crushed. Merlin stood there with a pale complexion, and he couldn't help shivering as numerous droplets of cold sweat dripped down from his forehead. Merlin, do you need my help resolving this issue? Solomon didn't look at the terrified wreck as he entered the Gilded Rose without even asking what had happened. All he cared about was whether Lin Yun needed his help resolving this problem. That's right, resolving it. If someone else said something like this, it would definitely draw the ire of the Alchemist Guild. After all, who would dare to stop the Alchemist Guild from seizing goods when they were in charge of this market? Wouldn't that be disrespecting the Alchemist Guild? But it was a totally different situation if Solomon was the one saying it. The black-robed alchemists, along with the shivering Merlin, didn't feel anything wrong with Solomon saying something like this. If Solomon said he would resolve it, then no matter who was right and who was wrong, no matter the cause and effect, the matter would be resolved. This was the extent of Solomon's status in Thousand Sails City. Lin Yun knew that as long as Solomon said something, these black-robed alchemists and Merlin would definitely fix everything and scamper back to the Alchemist Guild with gloomy expressions. What seizing? What hearing? They would be unrelated to Lin Yun. But after Lin Yun thought about it, he shook his head and rejected Solomon's kindness. No need. It wasn't because of some ridiculous pride, and it also wasn't because of some baffling honor. In fact, due to his previous life, Lin Yun's pride and honor, as well as his moral principles, could be considered to be quite flexible depending on the situation. He refused Solomon's kindness because he felt that the Gilded Rose still had too few alchemists. Mage Solomon, I already explained the matters of magic conducting rune creation paradigm on the road. In a few days, I'll come to the Sage Tower. I'll ask you for some pointers at that time. Very well. Solomon understood Lin Yun's intentions and didn't try to convince him. After nodding, he gazed at Merlin once again and muttered, "Give my respects to Liss." After saying this, he turned around and left the Gilded Rose. Yes, Merlin was finally able to let out a sigh of relief. His legs went soft and he sat down on the staircase, but he couldn't relish in the feeling of being let off easy. He wiped the sweat off his forehead, but didn't even take the time to properly wipe the dust off his face as he rushed toward Lin Yun. However, Merlin didn't act all high and mighty this time. An obsequious expression was now plastered on his face, as the stuttered, Mage Merlin, it's a misunderstanding, a complete misunderstanding. Ha ha, it's good if it's all just a misunderstanding. Lin Yun laughed as if the previous unpleasantness had never happened. He even kindly reminded Alchemist Merlin, there still seem to be a few shelves that are lacking seals over there. No, it's not needed, there is no need to put seals there by now. Merlin's smile looked more like unsightly weeping. Damn, if I had known that you were friendly with Solomon, how could I be willing to seize your goods? I got no benefits in the end and got on the bad side of Solomon. How could I be so unlucky apostrophe? No need, really? There is truly no need, Merlin miserably forced out. Good. Then Lin Yun nodded in relief at this, before suddenly asking, oh right, Alchemist Merlin, when does the hearing begin? The hearing is in an hour. No, I don't mean to urge you, Mage Merlin. If you don't have the time, the hearing could be. Just after he started talking, Merlin felt like slapping himself. Wasn't this a bad idea? He had just managed to gloss over the attempted seizure of goods, yet he was still talking about the hearing. What if Solomon returned? No, I have plenty of time. It would take 30 minutes to get from here to the Alchemist Guild. Alchemist Merlin, hurry up and seal everything. Merlin let out two surprised murmurs one after the other as he was completely stunned. After working for the Alchemist Guild for so many years, it was the first time Merlin saw an alchemy shop owner like this person. Not only was he impatient to participate in the hearing, but he was even urging him to hurry and seal everything. What is happening? Are you losing your mind? or am I? One was continuously urging while the other wanted to just stop. The sealing work was rushed ahead. Merlin commanded a few of the black-robed alchemists to hurriedly put seals on a few shelves before saying while shivering that the sealing had already been completed. The most frightening thing was that before he left, Lin Yan asked one thing. "Oh right, Alchemist Merlin, once the hearing is over, will I be missing some of my things?" "Definitely not." Merlin was on the verge of crying. He shook his head while guaranteeing, "That definitely will not happen." At the start, Merlin truly had planned to get some benefits out of this. After all, by the time the hearing was over, it wasn't even certain whether the Gilded Rose could continue doing business. Under these kinds of circumstances, no one would come to give him trouble over taking a few things for himself. But now, even if Merlin was bold, he wouldn't dare to make a move on Lin Yan. The young boss of the Gilded Rose was actually someone that could chat casually with Solomon. The only thing he would gain from acting against someone like this would be some enmity. Besides, with Solomon leaving behind that sentence, even Leader Lys would have no choice but to show a bit of respect and only go through the motions of having the hearing. Once finished, the Gilded Rose should be able to do business again. What if Solomon personally came out if he stole something? Thinking that this might be possible, Merlin's legs felt weak once again. Unfortunately, Lin Yan didn't say anything on the way to break up the awkward atmosphere, and the two spent their time in the carriage to the Alchemist Guild in complete silence. Looking at the time, 1 hour had passed. The hearing was held on the second floor. Merlin respectfully led Lin Yan to the door and knocked on the door before announcing, "The Gilded Rose's Mafia Merlin has arrived. Please come in." Merlin opened the door and led Merlin inside. This was a spacious conference room with very simple furnishing. There were a few chairs and a long table, and behind the long table were 3 middle-aged men sitting side by side. They didn't seem very old, each perhaps between 40 and 50. 10 meters in front of the table was a chair that apparently was left there for Lin Yan. "Mage Merlin, please sit." After Merlin led Lin Yan to the conference room, he respectfully asked Lin Yan to sit down before running toward one of the middle-aged men to whisper a few sentences in his ears. After hearing Merlin's words, the middle-aged man was clearly startled. He instantly glanced at Lin Yan in bewilderment before quickly lowering his head to cover his lack of self-control. However, the broken quill in his right hand still betrayed his mood. It was only a quill, but he couldn't hold it stable. Although they were 10 meters away and Merlin's voice was very low, Lin Yan could make out from Merlin's lips that he said, Solomon himself accompanied him back. It seemed that this middle-aged man was Merlin's backer in the Alchemist Guild. After Merlin withdrew from the conference room, the hearing officially began. "You are Mafia Merlin?" The first to ask the question was a middle-aged man that looked roughly 50 years old. The mana fluctuations from his body gave Lin Yan some pressure. If it had been before his advancement to Great Mage, Lin Yan might have only felt pressure and nothing more. But now his awareness toward mana fluctuations had greatly sharpened. With a glance, he could see that this middle-aged person should be a 5th rank Great Mage. But after reaching the rank of Great Mage, he might have taken a few detours, making his magic-conducting runes no longer able to maintain balance. For him to be able to even reach this step was thanks to the help of various alchemy potions. But he would be stuck at the 5th rank for life. "Mafia Merlin?" Not hearing any sort of response, the man frowned. As someone who was relatively higher in the ranks of the Alchemist Guild, although the number of hearings he had taken part in hadn't reached the triple digits yet, he still had participated in more than 80. In all of these, he had never seen one where the person being questioned would ignore him. Moreover, there were 2 of his peers watching on the side, making him feel like he had been disrespected. Naturally, he didn't have a good first impression of Lin Yan. "Ah, yes, I am Mafia Merlin." Lin Yan, who had felt sorry for the other side for being stuck at the 5th rank, came back to his senses after hearing the middle-aged man prompt him a second time. "Good, Mafia Merlin, you can now confess about the issue regarding your Gilded Rose." Chapter 53, Dissipation Potion. This chapter is updated by Novels.pl. "What do you mean, confess?" Lin Yan kept up a dazed expression, but he clearly understood that this overbearing middle-aged man was trying to intimidate him. Otherwise, he wouldn't have brought it up like this. Sure enough, as Lin Yan thought, The middle-aged man impatiently continued, "Could there be problems with the Gilded Rose, which is under your name, that even you yourself don't know about? And you ask me what I mean about confessing? I'm telling you, Mafia Merlin, you had better cooperate and answer this question truthfully. The severity of your punishment depends on your attitude. Don't be stubborn. That wouldn't be good for you and the Gilded Rose." This man had held many hearings, so he was quite used to handling these owners of alchemy shops. The most effective tactic was intimidation. These ruthless merchants might look like they abided by the law, but in reality, who hadn't made a few illegal deals. Most hearings were about that. As long as they were intimidated, these merchants would truthfully confess. Even things that the guild was unaware of would come out sometimes. This middle-aged man was highly experienced. Unfortunately, he was facing the Gilded Rose this time. The Gilded Rose rose up from scratch, and more than 90% of the products had been personally made by Lin Yun. How could Lin Yun not know if there was a problem with them? Thus, Lin Yun pushed back. "Then say it, what issue is there with the Gilded Rose?" The middle-aged man's face hardened as he thought to himself, "He is too arrogant, too savage. He refuses to confess to the problem and even ridiculed me, the host of the hearing, an esteemed alchemist of the Alchemist Guild." The middle-aged man stood up and pointed at Lin Yun as he warned, "Mafia Merlin, you should know where you are. This is the Alchemist Guild, not a place where you can behave as you wish. You'd better confess truthfully, or else." "Are you threatening me?" Although Lin Yun was still smiling, his eyes faintly narrowed as he stared back at the middle-aged man. "Mage Merlin, it is a mere formality. We aren't threatening you." Seeing the two of them glaring daggers at each other, one of the other men hurriedly joined the discussion. After appeasing Lin Yun, he patted the shoulder of his ashen-faced colleague. "Okay, Granger, let me do the questioning." Granger ruthlessly stared at Lin Yun for a few more moments and then sat down after snorting. "Mage Merlin, let me introduce myself first. I am called Basara. I am in charge of this hearing with Granger. We called you here to ask a few questions." "Sure, ask away." "First, I would like to ask of you, when the Gilded Rose had an alchemy exhibition yesterday at 10 in the morning, did the exhibition include a potion named the Hope Potion, which is rumored to be able to make a magic apprentice easily reach 9th rank?" "Yes." "Good." Second question. Was this potion bought by a 3rd rank magic apprentice named Cruz for the price of 200,000 gold? "Yes." And the last question, can Mage Merlin confirm whether this potion can make a magic apprentice easily reach 9th rank as it was explained by the Gilded Rose, and without any side effect? "Yes." "Good. I have no more questions." Basara nodded and only wrote something on a paper in front of him. "Mafia Merlin, I have to say that this is a very substandard scam." Granger stood up once again and looked at Lin Yun as if he was looking at an idiot as he continued, "I don't know what achievements you have in magic, but honestly, you've really failed in the alchemy field. When you plotted this trap, didn't you think with basic common sense?" After saying that, Granger picked up a book from the table and threw it in front of Lin Yun. If Granger's previous actions could be considered intimidation, then this action was certainly an attempt to humiliate him. Lin Yun naturally couldn't go and pick it up. That would be even worse than picking up soap in a shared shower. Lin Yun only glanced down and saw that this book was called History of Alchemy's Growth. Lin Yun saw it once in the Sage Tower. There was nearly no alchemy-related knowledge inside. It mainly talked about some important characters and events in the history of alchemy. "You see, knowledge is under your foot, but you are even unwilling to bend your waist to retrieve it." A sneer appeared on Granger's face. He felt as if he had the upper hand. "If you had been willing to look at this book, you wouldn't have left so many loopholes in your scam." On the 13th page it is clearly written that through several millennia of alchemy history, there had been 17 types of potions that were able to make a magic apprentice smoothly reach 9th rank. Each of them is an artwork that could be recorded in the annals of history. The cheapest one among them was worth 1,500,000 gold, while your Gilded Rose sold the so-called Hope Potion for barely a tenth of that. "I don't know whether to call you stupid or naive. Was your Gilded Rose always so charitable? Then how much should we price it at?" "Its price should be," Granger reflexively impulsively said half of his sentence before having a sudden realization and changing his tact. How much you should sell it for doesn't matter. The main point is that your Gilded Roses scam has already brought about serious consequences. What consequences? What consequences? Haha, you will understand soon. Granger gave Lin Yun a cold glare before calling for a staff member. After whispering a few words to that person, the latter quickly left the reception room. 10 minutes later, the staff member came back with a young magic apprentice in his late 20s. Now, let me introduce this person. He is Magic Apprentice Cruz, the one who bought the Hope Potion for 200,000 gold. Magic Apprentice Cruz, could you please share what happened to you after you drank the Hope Potion? Yes, this magic apprentice called Cruz clearly hadn't experienced any big events before. Standing in front of several great mages and great alchemists, he couldn't help acting rather nervous. His eyes faintly flickered as he recalled, that day. On that day, I originally planned on purchasing a few magic scrolls, but I didn't expect the Gilded Rose to organize an alchemy exhibition. I just happened to be at the first row. At that time I thought that a large alchemy shop like the Gilded Rose wouldn't scam people, and I felt lucky. I wanted to immediately become a 9th rank magic apprentice, so I bought it. I spent all my savings to buy the damned Hope Potion. And afterwards, they urged me to drink it on the spot. I did as instructed, and after drinking it, I truly felt my mana quickly increasing from 3rd rank to 4th rank, from 4th rank to 5th rank, before finally stopping at the 9th rank. At that time, I really thought that I was lucky. Many people congratulated me, and many more people were asking when there would be Hope Potion in stock. But in the end, after I came back, I hurriedly entered meditation in order to consolidate the level of mana. At that time I discovered that I couldn't undergo meditation, and moreover, that the previous surge of mana was quickly vanishing. I quickly fell from 9th rank to 8th rank, then from 8th rank to 7th rank. The more the young magic apprentice talked, the more his emotions came out, before finally, he became unable to control himself. This morning I couldn't even maintain my status of 3rd rank magic apprentice. Mafia Merlin, you scoundrel, you destroyed my life. I won't let you off. Calm down, Magic Apprentice Cruz. Yes, I originally was a 3rd rank magic apprentice, but look, I can't even maintain 3rd rank right now. Moreover, I still can't undergo meditation. Maybe tomorrow I might become an ordinary person devoid of mana. This was caused by the damn Gilded Rose. After saying that, the young magic apprentice even let out a few tears. Mafia Merlin, those are the consequences of your actions, Granger sneered while looking at Lin Yun. Magic Apprentice Cruz, can I trouble you to come over? You are too far. I can't see clearly. Lin Yun didn't pay attention to Granger's malicious accusations and simply beckoned Cruz over. It's fine Magic Apprentice Cruz, let him have a look at what the Gilded Rose did. This is the Alchemist Guild, no one will harm you. Understood. After obtaining Granger's guarantee, the young magic apprentice walked over. Lin Yun looked at the young magic apprentice for a long time. Mana is indeed dissipating. If this keeps going, let alone tomorrow, you might become an ordinary person today. Lin Yun's voice sounded sympathetic as he asked, oh right, Magic Apprentice Cruz, what does a dissipation potion taste like? What dissipation potion? The originally cowering magic apprentice almost jumped up when he heard the words dissipation potion. He looked like a cat whose tail had been stepped on, as he yowled, what dissipation potion? I don't understand what you are talking about. Chapter 54, Proof. This chapter is updated by Novels.pl. Mage Merlin, what does this mean? Upon hearing these words, let alone the young magic apprentice, even Basara, who had been immersed in his writing, began to frown. As a great alchemist, how could he not know what a dissipation potion was? It was a poison tailored for mages. Once poisoned, the victim's usable mana would decrease very rapidly. A lot of rogues like to douse their daggers in dissipation potion so that when fighting a mage, a small injury could change the outcome of the battle. But a mage drinking a dissipation potion? This had never been heard of. Sour, I presume? Lin Yun squinted as he kept watching that young magic apprentice, apparently not hearing Basara's question. You are talking nonsense." Under Lin Yun's intense gaze, the young magic apprentice was even more nervous. "What dissipation potion? I never heard about it. What proof do you have?" "A proof?" Lin Yun didn't move from his seat as he mused with a lazy voice. However, just as his words ended, a whoosh could be heard. It was followed by a splash of blood. Before anyone realized what had happened, Lin Yun had already taken out a glass bottle, and the spurt of blood entered the bottle without a single drop being spilled. The entire process was so fast that everyone was left in a daze for a moment. When Cruz clutched his right hand while letting out a miserable shriek, everyone understood what had happened. Fresh blood could be seen dripping from the young magic apprentice's wrist, and the sound from before had come from a quickly cast wind blade. In other words, he had cut open the young magic apprentice's wrist and collected the blood coming out in a glass bottle. And he had done it so quickly that no one was able to follow the action. What did this mean? The three people sitting on the other side of the table couldn't treat this lightly. Among the three of them, Granger was a 5th-rank Great Mage, Basara was a 6th-rank Great Mage, and the remaining one was someone who had only recently become a Great Mage. But even so, these three Great Mages were all in a daze and weren't able to clearly understand how it had happened. How did this Mage Merlin release that wind blade? How did he cut Cruz? And how did he collect the blood in the glass bottle? They weren't able to see it, and that realization shocked them. That casting speed was far too frightening. What would have happened if the target of that wind blade wasn't Cruz's wrist, but rather the neck of one of the three Great Mages? As the thought passed through his mind, Granger suddenly felt uncomfortable sitting in his chair. After all, ever since that young mage entered the reception room, Granger had deliberately been making things hard for him. This was partly because it was a necessary part of conducting the hearing, but it was also due to Granger's selfishness. Others might not know the reason, but how could Granger not know? The eldest son of the Monchai family, Ryan, had personally visited him and promised numerous precious magic materials. All he needed to do was to make things difficult for that Mafia Merlin guy during the hearing. Granger had unhesitantly agreed. As he saw it, Mafia Merlin was but a 20-year-old mage whose biggest backer had already passed away. He was now operating an alchemy shop with a very old butler. He had no influence and no background. So what if he embarrassed him in the hearing? Would such a person dare to retaliate? Retaliating against a great alchemist. Even if he was bold, he wouldn't dare. And in the hypothetical case that he dared to do so, would he even have the ability? A youth who had just advanced to become a mage retaliating against a 5th-rank Great Mage, such a joke. Thus, from the beginning, Granger had been thinking of every possible way to make it hard for this young mage, while each of his words had an intimidating tone and each of his questions carried deep malice. But now, Granger felt a little bit nervous. He had suddenly found out that the young mage he had been trying to intimidate was a huge threat. He had cast a spell that harmed their witness, and none of the great mages had been able to stop him, or even react at all. This casting speed was too frightening. Granger went pale as he thought about the fact he had been antagonizing such a frightening person. Merlin. Mage Merlin. What does it mean? Nothing much. It's just that. Didn't Magic Apprentice Cruz just say that I didn't have any proof? Lin Yun gently shook the glass bottle in his hand while calmly explaining, I felt that this was a provocation, and thus I decided to produce some proof. What is that proof? The proof? Lin Yun smiled and stood up, shaking the glass bottle while walking toward the table. What? What are you doing? Granger immediately jumped up in surprise. But after he cried out in alarm, the great alchemist realized that he had forgotten to act with decorum, and promptly spoke further to cover it up. You can show your proof, you don't need to come up here to do so. Great Alchemist Granger, I'm only bringing the proof to you, you don't need to be so nervous. I am not nervous. How could Granger admit something like that? Fortunately, Lin Yun didn't press the matter. He only put the glass bottle on the table and explained, this is the proof. What kind of proof is that? Granger was confused. No, it wasn't just Granger. Although the other two great alchemists didn't say anything, when they looked at Lin Yun, They couldn't help frowning. What kind of proof could there be in this bottle containing a bit of blood? Lin Yun quickly gave them the answer. Great Alchemist Granger, your knowledge is truly lacking. Lin Yun pointed at their History of Alchemy's Growth on the floor while saying with a smile, if you were to carefully read this book, you would find in the third paragraph of page 27 that ruler Jiang Tui had been stabbed with a weapon doused in dissipation potion in his later years, leading to all kinds of symptoms. If I'm not wrong, it was mentioned that it took 3 months for ruler Jiang Tui's wound to heal, and the flow of blood was never-ending. Granger's expression was unsightly. What he had just used to make fun of Lin Yun was now being used against him, and he couldn't say anything against it because the description was too crucial. For some time, Granger stared attentively at the book on the ground, but he could neither pick it up nor leave it there. If he picked it up, that was the same as losing his reputation because of his earlier words, but if he didn't pick it up, how could he refute the claim? You see, Great Alchemist Granger, knowledge is at your feet, but you are unwilling to bend your waist to pick it up. The most terrible part was Lin Yun's sneering. For some time, Granger really felt like slapping himself. How about you look inside to check? Granger? Basara, who was feeling a bit intrigued, couldn't help but advise him to continue. Granger turned to glance at Basara, and although he didn't say anything, he had already cursed 18 generations of Basara's ancestors. Fuck, you are a bastard. I'm already in this situation, but not only are you refusing to support me, you're even throwing stones at me. If you want to take a look, how about you go pick it up and check yourself? The hearing has to continue. Basara clearly knew with a glance that Granger wasn't thinking anything good about him right now, so after a short time, he simply lowered his head and gave this reason. But to Granger, having this reason was a way out of the embarrassing situation. Thus, after hesitating for a long time, the great alchemist clenched his teeth and picked up History of Alchemy's Growth. When he looked inside, he wanted to find a hole where he could hide. After flipping through some pages, he saw that on the third paragraph of page 27, it was indeed written that ruler Jiang Tui of the Third Dynasty had spent 3 months recovering from his wound and that it had bled profusely. Everything was as Mafia Merlin had said. Granger suddenly realized that the path that this hearing was heading down was far from good for him. He stood still for a while, staring at the words before him. Sure enough, after Granger checked the relevant passage from the book, Lin Yun held the glass bottle up and gently shook it. Why was the wound continuously bleeding? Take a look at the drops of blood. It has been 10 minutes since I cut Magic Apprentice Cruz's wrist, yet these drops of blood still show no signs of coagulating. This blood simply cannot coagulate. Great Alchemist Granger, you wouldn't tell me that it is but a mere coincidence? This is only your conjecture. This can't be used as evidence. Granger felt that he could still salvage the situation. This isn't a mere conjecture. Lin Yun didn't plan to give him the slightest opportunity. He picked up a quill and a piece of paper on the table and started writing. He wrote down an alchemy formula containing 4 lines. There, compound this potion and you can extract at least a drop of dissipation potion from this blood sample here in 3 minutes. At that time, if Great Alchemist Granger is still not convinced, he can try it himself. Chapter 55, Conclusion. This chapter is updated by Novels.pl. Basara once again hit Granger while he was down. He proceeded to compound the potion according to Lin Yun's formula. Granger looked at the potion and felt like crying. Seriously, how could you move so fast and finish compounding in a few minutes? Do you think I'm not miserable enough? Granger's thoughts were about right. Basara didn't stop after taking out the finished potion and volunteered to help Lin Yun with the refining. Under the exquisite work of the great alchemist, the blood inside the glass bottle quickly separated, leaving a few drops of transparent liquid behind. As it was decanted into another glass bottle, a sour smell assaulted their noses. Granger, look at this. After Basara was done with his work, he took a deep breath before showing an embarrassed expression. After a moment of silence, Granger almost jumped up. Fuck, why are you looking at me with such an awkward expression? You aren't thinking of truly making me try it, right? We are both members of the Alchemist Guild, why are you acting like that? What do you think you are doing? Granger almost subconsciously covered his mouth. He looked at Basara with vigilance. Basara saw Granger's expression, but he still didn't know what his colleague was thinking. That idiot! Basara inwardly scolded him. This person was also a fellow great alchemist. Basara was looking at him with disdain, as his actions were too unsightly. In order to make some profits, he had gone so far as to maliciously accuse this young mage at the hearing. What he did was clear, yet he thought that others couldn't see. If it had happened to someone else, Basara likely wouldn't have bothered about it. To a great alchemist, the survival of a random alchemy shop was only a trivial matter. Offending a colleague for a trivial matter wasn't worth it in Basara's eyes. The problem was he couldn't ignore Lin Yun's matters. What Merlin had said earlier was very clear. When that young mage came back to the Gilded Rose, he had been escorted back by Solomon. What did that mean? Is a person that Solomon personally escorted someone you can offend? Granger could be considered lucky. That Windblade earlier had only cut Cruz's wrist. If Mage Merlin had a worse temper, that Windblade might have fallen on your neck due to your previous behavior. It would be too late for you to regret it then. Regardless of your fate, don't implicate me. I don't want to clean up your mess. As he thought this, Basara felt a little troubled. The hand holding the glass bottle seemed to be moving toward Granger. Get that away from me! Granger quickly cried out. Basara took a look at Granger and then opened the glass bottle before giving his opinion. It seems like it truly is dissipating potion. But he still ended up asking, Granger, what do you think? Granger opened his mouth, but he didn't know what he should say. Granger was too embarrassed by the situation. Could he agree to what Basara said? Then today's hearing might turn into the biggest joke of the Alchemist Guild, and the most laughable person would definitely be Granger himself. But if he didn't agree, what could he do about the bottle Basara was holding? Would he really have to try it? And what if it really was dissipating potion? This Granger remained confused and indecisive for a long time before finally realizing something. So what if it's the Monchai family? So what if they offer magic materials? To hell with it. If I can't protect myself, why should I care about your trivial matter? People were like this. They would put themselves first when facing adversity. That's right. I also feel that this is dissipation potion. Granger's mind cleared up and he immediately figured out his course of action. He slowly took the bottle and walked to the young man that had been brought in as a witness. Magic Apprentice Cruz, what do you have to say? Cruz was in a daze. The situation had changed too suddenly. First, a Windblade cut his wrist, leaving these great alchemists speechless, and even worse, this particular great alchemist changed sides and was now grilling him instead. How could this happen? Cruz originally wasn't someone with much social experience. Among the people he usually came in contact with, the most influential ones were only alchemists. Cruz had never even dreamed of being in the same room as three great alchemists. And now he was being questioned by a great alchemist. Cruz stood there lifelessly, cold sweat dripping from his forehead. How could this be? Didn't the butler of the Monchai family guarantee that I wouldn't be exposed and that if anything went wrong, Great Alchemist Granger would definitely help me? What kind of help is this? I agree with Great Alchemist Basara. This substance that was extracted from your blood is dissipation potion. In other words, Magic Apprentice Cruz, you presented false testimony in this hearing. Therefore, after discussing with Great Alchemist Basara, we have decided to end this hearing here. The Gilded Rose can start conducting business again. As for you, Magic Apprentice Cruz, there will be an investigation in a little while. I hope you will cooperate. Finished. I'm finished. After Granger was done talking, the young Magic Apprentice immediately felt everything darkening before him. The conditions the Monchai family had agreed to would all disappear. He would have to deal with the consequences of the dissipation potion on his own. And the most frightening thing was that the Alchemist Guild was even going to investigate him. Once that happened, the false testimony he had given in this hearing would come up. He would never be able to find work in Thousand Sails City later on. It shouldn't have happened like this. When he left the Gilded Rose the other day, he had already been a 9th rank magic apprentice. As long as he worked hard, he might have been able to become a mage. A beautiful future was beckoning to him. Why did I accept Jonathan's offer? Why did I drink that dissipation potion? Cruz stood there in a daze. He wanted to say a few sentences to justify himself, but his words were barely mumbles as he muttered under his breath, "This isn't dissipation potion, you have no proof." But these words were heard by Granger. Granger practically wanted to kill him for that. "Fuck, you still want proof? Are you trying to get me to drink this dissipation potion? Come here, take Magic Apprentice Cruz out and watch him strictly." Magic Apprentice Cruz might be related to some incidents. In a bit, the Alchemist Guild will send someone to investigate him. The world in front of the young magic apprentice turned dark as he was dragged out of the meeting room. While Cruz was being dragged away, a staff member came up and took a look at the alchemy formula. But the situation in the meeting room was a bit hectic. Granger was busy making arrangements, Lin Yun was busy sneering at him, and Basara was busy recording the events of the hearing. And as for the remaining Great Mage, he was dozing off for some reason. Thus, no one was thinking about the formula. This Mage Merlin, this was a misunderstanding, truly a misunderstanding. Granger's forced smiling face looked more like an unsightly crying face. Originally, as an esteemed great alchemist, even if Granger made a mistake, he still wouldn't try to curry favor with some inexperienced mage by apologizing. But Basara had told him about the matter of Solomon escorting Lin Yun earlier, whatever the reason for that was, when they were discussing the outcome of the hearing. Granger really felt startled and miserable at that revelation. The one that the Monchai family wanted him to handle this time was truly a dangerous person. If he had known this earlier, forget magic materials. Even if the Monchai family opened their own warehouse to him, he still wouldn't agree. Solomon had never personally escorted someone like this for the past 20 years. Last time, Solomon had only walked Ryan of the Monchai family to his door in the Sage Tower, and that alone had been enough to make huge waves in Thousand Sails City. But this Mafia Merlin was personally escorted back to the Gilded Rose. Granger felt cold sweat dripping from his back. Haha. Regarding the matter of Granger obviously trying to curry favor with him, Lin Yun only laughed, not saying anything. However, he didn't continue to make things difficult for the other side, because Lin Yun knew that someone would come to find him soon. Sure enough, while Granger was trying to think of every possible way to justify himself, another staff member entered the reception room and whispered a few sentences in Basara's ears. Basara, who had still been sorting the records of the hearing, froze before suddenly standing up and looking at Lin Yun, his expression full of doubt and shock. Basara stood there in a daze for a long time before letting out a gulp. Mage Merlin. What is it, Great Alchemist Basara? Your esteemed alchemy formula. By any chance, is there a missing part? The tone Basara used was very respectful this time. Anyone would be shocked to see a great alchemist speak so respectfully to a young mage. After all, Basara was one of the most important members of the Alchemist Guild, his status above Granger's. The number of people he would talk so respectfully to could be counted on two hands in the entire Alchemist Guild, no, in the entire Thousand Sails City. Chapter 56, Trade. This chapter is updated by Novels.pl. But Basara was now being very polite to Lin Yun. It was because the leader of the Alchemist Guild, Liz, had sent someone to give an order. Ask Mage Merlin if he would be willing to give the rest of the alchemy formula in exchange for a chance to study in the Mercury Tower for 3 months. Basara's expression became strange when he heard this. The Mercury Tower was essentially the kingdom's holy land of alchemy. Every alchemist dreamt of going there because it not only had the best atmosphere, but also had the most comprehensive and profound stores of alchemy-related knowledge. With enough luck, one might be able to get pointers from a master alchemist. But the Mercury Tower rarely got in contact with the outside world, and it wouldn't recruit disciples externally. The alchemists there were like monks, immersing themselves in their studies day after day, year after year. To some extent, the Mercury Tower could be considered an independent kingdom, one that only existed for the advancement of alchemy. That independent kingdom was practically isolated from the rest of the world. Only when the legendary masters needed to replace their assistants would outsiders get an opportunity to enter the Mercury Tower. These opportunities were very rare. At the very most, only 10 people would have this opportunity in a given year, and every major alchemist guild like the one in Thousand Sails City would obtain one spot every few years. Basara himself had been applying for over 10 years, and although he hadn't been chosen yet, he never gave up. After all, Basara knew that due to his innate level of talent, he had already approached the limit of his path of alchemy. If he only relied on hard work, he could end up stuck at his current level for years. If he wanted to progress further, he had to enter the Mercury Tower and gain access to the profound knowledge and the help of those legendary master alchemists. But that opportunity was too difficult to obtain. Even though Basara's status in the Alchemist Guild wasn't low at all, getting a chance to enter the Mercury Tower was based on luck. But now, this kind of opportunity was actually being offered in exchange for an alchemy formula. Basara's expression became quite strange as he thought about it. It wasn't because of him missing out on the opportunity to go the Mercury Tower, but rather because of the implied value of that alchemy formula. Although Lys' reputation in Thousand Sails City wasn't as awe-inspiring as that of someone like Solomon, his prestige within the Alchemist Guild wasn't something that an outsider could imagine. His status here was nearly that of a god. For complicated and important decisions, as long as Lys said something, the rest of the Alchemist Guild wouldn't dare to go against it. This wasn't the same as Solomon in the Sage Tower. Although Solomon might have power that shook the entire Thousand Sails City, he was only one of the 3 members of a council in the Sage Tower. For important decisions, they would have to convene a meeting and the 3 of them would come to a decision together. But Lys reigned supreme in the Alchemist Guild, every final decision depending on his word, like a dictatorship. Just like now, with the precious opportunity to go to the Mercury Tower being decided in a word by Lys, and no one questioning it. Even Basara, who had been continuously applying for 10 years, could only look at Lin Yun with envy. Great alchemist Basara, this question isn't very appropriate. Lin Yun looked at Basara with a smile that didn't quite look like a smile. Although he didn't say it outright, the ridicule contained in his smile was obvious. This Basara's expression became awkward when he heard Lin Yun's answer. That question indeed wasn't very proper. For alchemy shops, their formulas were everything. Whoever had better alchemy formulas, whoever could craft better items, those shops would occupy a bigger share of the market. Even a small shop like the Gilded Rose, whose sales were on the scale of a few 100,000 gold, would become the focus of Thousand Sails City after the appearance of the Hope Potion. Once the hearing was over, the business would inevitably become very prosperous. As long as they didn't make any mistakes, it would only be a matter of time before they became the #1 alchemy shop of Thousand Sails City. The kind of core knowledge that could decide between success and failure. It truly wasn't appropriate to ask about it, but disregarding it was out of the question. That Mage Merlin, our Alchemist Guild isn't asking for your formula for free. We wish to trade for it. Oh, how about 1 million gold? Haha. How could Lin Yun not understand the value of the missing part of the formula? Any alchemist that was worth their salt wouldn't be willing to part with something like this. Thus, Basara's offer of 1 million gold only earned a chuckle from Lin Yun. How about this? Basara became immediately worried when he heard Lin Yun's reaction and immediately changed the offer. Formulas for your formula. As long as you are willing to let us know this formula, our Alchemist Guild will trade you 5 unique formulas. We guarantee that these 5 formulas are unique to the Alchemist Guild and you won't find them anywhere else in Thousand Sails City. Haha. Basara was sweating crazily as he wondered, why is he still chuckling apostrophe? An esteemed great alchemist was giving him a generous offer, but yet this fellow seemed to find the situation amusing. At this time, Basara felt his heart freezing. Force isn't an option. This is someone supported by Solomon. If that old butcher is unhappy, even Leader Lys might suffer, he thought to himself. Moreover, that Mage Merlin is most likely a great mage. Just the display of that wind blade was enough to prove it. 3 great mages weren't able to react. If they really fought, Basara didn't have the confidence to survive. When considering his strength and background, that Mage Merlin already had the qualifications to stand on an equal footing with Basara. Not to mention, he had also brought out an alchemy formula that even Leader Lys was interested in. Facing such a person, even if Basara was unwilling, he had no choice but to rein in his temper and negotiate. Ultimately, Basara clenched his teeth and took out his trump card. Okay, Mage Merlin, how about if we give you the opportunity to enter the Mercury Tower for 3 months in exchange for the last part of the alchemy formula? As Basara forced himself to say this, His face became twisted. Gone, gone. Another opportunity gone like that apostrophe. But immediately afterward, Basara saw the young mage smile brightly and respond, "No deal." "No, no deal?" Basara was startled. His expression was like he had just seen his own wife following someone into a hotel. "No deal, no deal." Basara's mind was in a mess due to that one sentence. No, no, no. How could you not want this deal? This time, Basara didn't care about his prestige as he stared at Lin Yun in disbelief. If not for him still being wary of the young mage's shocking power, Basara might have grabbed his neck and shook him while asking if he was a fool. How could he possibly turn down such an incredible offer? Doesn't he know what it means to get to study at the Mercury Tower? Doesn't he know how many alchemists keep applying every year only to end up failing? I am one of those alchemists. Okay, great alchemist Basara, I am willing to trade this alchemy formula, but I am not interested in studying at the Mercury Tower. Seeing Basara's emotional response, Lin Yun felt a bit bad about keeping him in suspense. After thinking for a moment, he gave a small hint. In fact, one of the reasons Lin Yun had come to the hearing today was precisely to sell this alchemy formula. He knew that he would get a chance to demonstrate its effects. As for the rest, such as the matter of making Granger feel as if he had been slapped in public, it was merely done casually. Otherwise, Lin Yun wouldn't have written a quad formula alchemy formula. If he only wanted to prove that Magic Apprentice Cruz had drunk a dissipation potion, Lin Yun had 100 different methods that he could have used. He wouldn't have to use such a troublesome one. Thus Lin Yun wrote a quad formula alchemy formula while hiding the most important one. A normal great alchemist might not have noticed it. But those peak great alchemists who had been in that realm for many years, thirsting to reach the master realm, would inevitably notice that this quad formula alchemy formula had a part missing. That part of the formula was the core. As long as that final part of the alchemy formula was integrated with the rest, the entire formula would undergo heaven-defying changes. When compounding it, it would create a new kind of potion, something that would be enough for great alchemists to enter the ranks of master alchemists. Therefore, what Lin Yun wanted to sell today was, in fact, an opportunity to become a master alchemist. This was a lot more precious than an opportunity to study at the Mercury Tower. Moreover, entering the Mercury Tower was only a matter of gaining knowledge to Lin Yun, and Lin Yun didn't lack knowledge at all. Lin Yun was currently lacking in alchemists. The only place that could quickly offer him a lot of alchemists at a viable price was the Alchemist Guild. But he didn't need to tell Basara that. Lin Yun only gave Basara a hint to prod him to come and properly chat with him about business. "Oh right, great alchemist Basara, I think the Alchemist Guild should carefully investigate the matter of who it was that slandered the Gilded Rose. This is obviously challenging the rules of the industry. If it ever happened again, the prestige of the Alchemist Guild would definitely be adversely affected." Lin Yun didn't give Basara an opportunity to reply. After he said what he wanted, he left the spacious reception room. The three great alchemists were left behind, staring at his back. They were dumbstruck for a good while. Chapter 57, Satisfied. This chapter is updated by Novels.pl. No wonder Granger always said that these ruthless merchants were all troublesome characters. Mage Merlin clearly wanted to retaliate against the person that slandered him, but by using such a dignified reason, he could make it seem like he was actually worried about the possibility that the Alchemist Guild's prestige might suffer. Basara was stunned for a while before he suddenly noticed something wrong. He wasn't just instigating the Alchemist Guild to make a move. This was most likely a hint. After thinking about it, Basara suddenly understood. Indeed, he must be hinting that the Alchemist Guild should give an account to the Gilded Rose. If anyone else tried this, Basara would most likely just spit at them. How could the Alchemist Guild be pushed into making a move so easily, and even be asked to give an account on top of that? But now, not only did Basara refrain from being impolite, but he even almost laughed out loud. Although Mage Merlin declined the opportunity to study in the Mercury Tower, he did say that the alchemy formula could be traded. In other words, it wasn't that Mage Merlin was unwilling to trade it at all, but that the initial offer wasn't satisfying enough. Negotiations were still open. As long as he didn't completely reject the idea, Basara could still find another way. Mage Merlin isn't satisfied with the offer? That's easy enough to solve. Change the offer until he is satisfied. Once he managed to obtain the alchemy formula, Daedalus might be happy enough with his work to give him that opportunity to study in the Mercury Tower. The only problem now was whether he could satisfy Mage Merlin. But it did seem that there was an opportunity. The more Basara thought about it, the more excited he became. After some time, he bade farewell to his two colleagues, and without looking back, he left the reception room with his papers. After leaving the reception room, Basara restrained his excitement while hurrying to the study room of Daedalus. Usually, Lys would be in his study at this time, either reading or receiving a guest, so he should have the time to report his findings to Daedalus there. But halfway there, Basara's footsteps slowed down. He suddenly recalled Lin Yun's final words. Although he was certain that this was a sort of hint, he hadn't really confirmed anything. If he hastily reported the matter of the trade to Daedalus and everything went well, then it would be good, but if something happened and Daedalus didn't get that alchemy formula in the end, it would be a serious problem. Let alone not getting a chance to go to the Mercury Tower this time, he might never get a chance to go there for the rest of his life. No good. I can't go to Daedalus just yet. I have to finalize the deal with Mage Merlin first. Upon realizing this, Basara stopped and headed back toward the reception room while also sending someone to call Merlin over. Great Alchemist Basara, what is your instruction? Merlin was a lot different from when he was at the Gilded Rose, not acting arrogant at all. In front of Basara, he was wearing a fawning smile. The difference between the status of an alchemist and a great alchemist was huge, not to mention that Basara was a higher-up of the alchemist guild who was trusted by Daedalus. His status was even higher than Granger's. Merlin would usually do his best to curry favor with his superiors, so he wouldn't dare to waste his time. I heard that the Twin Moons Chamber of Commerce made some large moves lately. Yes, President Monchai of the Twin Moons Chamber of Commerce is worthy of being called Thousand Sales City's boldest merchant. This time, he opened 10 alchemy shops all at once. Hearing Basara's tone, Merlin knew that he was being asked to give a report of the situation. From what I saw, it won't be long until the Twin Moons Chamber of Commerce is able to monopolize the alchemy market of Thousand Sales City like the previous Flashing Gold Chamber of Commerce did. Basara frowned slightly. He was a bit dissatisfied with Merlin's words. I didn't call you over to hear you flatter the Twin Moons Chamber of Commerce. What use is there in telling me that? Originally, Basara had still felt that Merlin was quite efficient at gathering information and usually was very keen and discerning when handling his work. Moreover, Merlin had been trying especially hard to curry favor with him, so Basara had intended to give him a chance. But ultimately, Merlin failed to draw the proper conclusions. Seems like I should distance myself from this idiot to not get implicated by him later on. Merlin didn't know that those few ill-timed flattering sentences had actually just ruined his own future. Meanwhile, Merlin still wanted to show off in front of the Great Alchemist. Oh right, Great Alchemist Basara, I already sent a congratulatory gift on your behalf when the Twin Moons Chamber of Commerce opened their business. Basara suddenly stopped breathing. He stared ferociously at Merlin with his eyes wide open. You must be kidding? Jolted by this discovery, Basara nearly jumped up. I'm trying to distance myself from the Twin Moons Chamber of Commerce and you actually used my name to send a congratulatory gift. Do you want to speed up my downfall? Basara was inwardly panicking at this point. I'm done. I was truly done in by that bastard Merlin. After all, the Twin Moons Chamber of Commerce was the one that embarrassed the Gilded Rose. It would be a big problem if Mage Merlin found out that I sent a congratulatory gift to the Twin Moons Chamber of Commerce. He wouldn't need to do much to retaliate. Refusing to trade that alchemy formula would be enough. If Daedalus gets angry, who knows how many people will be out of luck. Who told you to send a gift on my behalf? He lashed out. Ah? Merlin froze. He looked at Basara, who had suddenly become angry, and didn't know what to do. He felt stunned and genuinely surprised. What's going on? The relationship between Great Alchemist Basara and the Twin Moons Chamber of Commerce was usually pretty good. There shouldn't be any problem at all with sending a congratulatory gift for the opening of their shops. So why would Great Alchemist Basara become so angry at him for doing this? For some time, Merlin didn't dare to say a word, He only looked at Basara while frozen in fright. "Now, immediately, get on a horse and go to the Twin Moons alchemy shop. If you can stir up some trouble, do so. The more trouble you cause for me, the better." Basara felt hard-pressed, so he ended the discussion and ordered Milan to go back with this strange task. What? Why aren't you getting on the move?" Yes. After sending Milan away, Basara massaged his temples and thought to himself, "Damn, keeping my distance from that Milan is truly wise. What if I ended up dead because of that idiot apostrophe?" In the past few days, the most sensational matter was undoubtedly the opening of the Monchai family's alchemy shops. They opened 10 shops at the same time, one of which was the Twin Moons Splendor, located in the victorious Return Street. It was acclaimed as Thousand Sales City's biggest alchemy shop. It had the best magic equipment, the most mystical potions, and the most advanced alchemy skills. It even had a great alchemist personally overseeing it. The person in charge of Twin Moons Splendor was the butler of the Monchai family, Jonathan. These past 2 days, Jonathan had been in a very good mood. First, it was because of the opening of Twin Moons Splendor. His master entrusted him with a heavy responsibility, being in charge of the biggest alchemy shop in all of Thousand Sales City. And second, he was feeling gleeful because Jonathan knew that the Alchemist Guild was currently holding a hearing. It was the hearing of Mather Merlin, the one that had made Fail slap him twice at the Black Horn auction. Although the results of the hearing had yet to come out, Jonathan was already celebrating internally. He knew that before the hearing started, his master had sent young Master Iron to pay a visit to one of the hosts of the hearing, Great Alchemist Granger. Moreover, he had offered precious magic materials that any great alchemist wouldn't be able to refuse. As long as Granger messed around with the hearing, Mather would only be able to end up crying in front of the Alchemist Guild. At that time, he would be able to relish in that upstart's misery while simultaneously clearing away the rival of Twin Moons Splendor, thus making him feel quite cheerful. Jonathan kept smiling for the entire afternoon. By the time evening fell, Milan had come to pay a visit, and Jonathan's smile bloomed. Jonathan felt quite sure that Milan was here to bring good news. "Alchemist Milan, please sit. Please sit." Jonathan had a cordial smile on his face as he personally welcomed Milan into the shop with an eager expression on his face. "Alchemist Milan, I have been waiting for you for many days." To be honest, Milan felt quite favorable toward Jonathan. This wasn't the first time the two men had come into contact with each other. One was supervising the alchemy businesses on behalf of the Alchemist Guild while the other was the most trusted butler of the Monchai family. Moreover, the Twin Moons Chamber of Commerce recently stepped foot into the alchemy market, so the number of times the two met had risen sharply. Last time, for example, Milan had delivered a congratulatory gift in Basara's name, and Jonathan had personally received it. Compared with those madmen in the guild who were always obsessed with alchemy, Jonathan clearly treated people a lot better. It was a butler's specialty. The last time they met, Milan had felt like he had been cleansed. He had a very good feeling about Jonathan. But a good feeling was only a good feeling. Compared to his future, even the best feelings would have to be put aside. Chapter 58, Perfect. This chapter is updated by Novels.pl. I don't need to sit. Jonathan, I came for a different matter this time. After Milan entered Twin Moons Splendor, he ignored the butler's polite greeting and maintained a strict business attitude. Haha, Alchemist Milan, you sure like making jokes. Seeing Milan's demeanor, Jonathan's expression stiffened. Although he forced himself to smile, that kind of smile looked very artificial. Jonathan wasn't an idiot. When he heard Milan's words, he knew that things were amiss. After all, he was the butler of the Monchai family. Others might not specifically feel that Jonathan was worthy of respect, but they had to give some respect to Master Monchai. Not to mention Milan, even his backer, Great Alchemist Basara, would always give Monchai the proper respect by addressing his butler as Butler Jonathan instead of using his name directly. Jonathan knew that there was one situation when others didn't call him Butler Jonathan in a formal greeting, which was when the reputation of Master Monchai was useless. Like that time in the Black Horn auction. Fail had called him Jonathan and then fiercely slapped him afterwards. It's no joke, Jonathan. I came this time because someone reported some issues with the quality of your materials, so I came for a routine inspection. How could this be? Faced with Merlin's words, Jonathan's heart started beating violently. The reason for Jonathan's panic wasn't that he thought there might be an issue with the quality. After all, although it was common practice among alchemy shops to sell large quantities of goods without regard for quality, the Twin Moons Splendor had only been open for a few days, and it urgently needed to be successful. Monchai even personally instructed that he would rather take a loss to ensure that the items sold by the Twin Moons Splendor were of superior quality. As for whether there could still be a problem under these circumstances, Jonathan would be the first one to deny it. But the problem was that this wasn't a matter that could be fixed with just Jonathan's words. Jonathan clearly understood this. The quality of many alchemy products was unclear at first sight. Alchemists weren't machines, and no matter how outstanding an alchemist was, he couldn't guarantee that none of the items would have any defects whatsoever. As long as Merlin spent enough time, he would find some products with quality issues sooner or later. This wasn't something that Master Monchai would solve with a few sentences, or something that the Twin Moons Chamber of Commerce could settle with some money. Alchemist Merlin, please listen to me. Jonathan became worried as he thought of the possible outcome. He didn't care whether it was rude as he reached out to grab Merlin's hands. Please listen, there is no issue with our Twin Moons Splendor's alchemy products. Let go. Merlin coldly looked at Jonathan. Are you kidding me? He thought to himself. Just because you say that there is no problem, there is no problem. It doesn't matter what you say in this matter. Even my words are worthless. This came from Great Alchemist Basara, Great Alchemist Basara himself. One of the higher-ups of the Alchemy Guild, he is second only to Leader Liss. Do you know what Great Alchemist Basara said? He sent me to immediately create trouble for the Twin Moons Splendor, and the more the better. In this situation, let alone being acquainted with me, even if you were a relative, I still wouldn't give you any respect. But out loud, he only assured, it's okay, Jonathan, it's just a mere formality. You'd better cooperate. After speaking these words, Merlin ignored Jonathan and directed the black-robed alchemists to inspect the goods. This is bad. Seeing Merlin's attitude, Jonathan knew that this was a terrible situation. He could see that every one of Merlin's black-robed subordinates was looking seriously at the items as they performed the inspection. Moreover, once they were done with an item, it would be handed to Merlin for another check. How could a routine inspection be so detailed and conscientious? Jonathan had a bad feeling growing within. Oh no, this is terrible. The way Merlin was proceeding, he would find something wrong sooner or later, and at that time, they would definitely have to go through a hearing. The Twin Moons Splendor, which had just started doing business, couldn't afford this. And the first one to suffer from Master Monchai's wrath would definitely be Jonathan. Jonathan looked at Merlin with a complicated expression, his mind completely at a loss. What is going on? Although he didn't have a deep relationship with Merlin, the benefits were never lacking, so Merlin had guaranteed that he would help as much as he could if the Twin Moons Splendor had a problem. To be honest, Jonathan didn't have much hope of finding a resolution. But he couldn't really accept Merlin becoming hostile so suddenly. Has he been incited by someone else to do this? Of course, someone is definitely behind this. Jonathan understood. Merlin's power in the Alchemist Guild wasn't small, but Merlin shouldn't be able to do something like this of his own initiative. The Twin Moons Splendor was a property of the Monchai family, after all. Merlin's actions meant that the Alchemist Guild was opposing the Monchai family. One problem would lead to a dispute between the two major forces. Merlin wasn't that bold. But if it isn't Merlin, then who is it? Who could be capable of influencing the Alchemist Guild's decision and having Merlin cause trouble for the Twin Moons Splendor? The more Jonathan thought about it, the more alarmed he felt. These, and these, bring all of these back. As Jonathan was filled with mounting dread, Merlin gave a few orders as he pointed at about a dozen items. The scene nearly made Jonathan cry. And it wasn't over yet. Jonathan, I am regretfully informing you that there are indeed some severe issues with the products being sold by the Twin Moons Splendor. We will need to conduct an investigation to see how grave this is. Until then, the Twin Moons Splendor will have to temporarily close down. We will notify you when you can reopen. What? Close down? Jonathan was startled by the harshness of the decision. For an alchemy shop, What was the difference between closing down and going out of business, especially for a shop like the Twin Moons Splendor that had just begun operating? Closing down just as their reputation was about to shoot up meant that all their efforts would be wasted. They had already sunk in over $1 million gold. Milan's sentence was like making them throw away $1 million gold. This was too vicious. At this point, Jonathan really wanted to ask who it was that was targeting the Twin Moons Splendor. Unfortunately, Milan didn't even give him the opportunity to ask. After pronouncing his judgment, he had his black gown subordinates secure those dozen alchemy items he had indicated and immediately left. Jonathan stood by himself for a very long time, grinding his teeth as he asked out loud, "Who the hell is targeting the Twin Moons Splendor?" Jonathan naturally wouldn't know that the accursed culprit didn't even take this matter seriously. Basara hadn't come to the wrong conclusion. The words Lin Yun said when he left were indeed a hint. Lin Yun was that kind of person, after all. Since someone wanted to act against the Gilded Rose, Lin Yun wouldn't mind using the Alchemist Guild to ruthlessly counterattack. But that was all. Who schemed against him and why they did so? Finding out these things wasn't something Lin Yun was interested in. Time was too valuable for a mage, and it wasn't worth wasting any to deal with these matters. Knowing that the Alchemist Guild wanted to obtain that part of alchemy formula was enough. If they wanted to obtain that part of alchemy formula, they would inevitably have to satisfy him. So before departing, he left them quite the obvious hint. Someone made a move on me, and I'm very dissatisfied. The Alchemist Guild would then have to come up with a possible method to satisfy him. To Lin Yun, the matter was that simple. As for what the Alchemist Guild would do next, Lin Yun didn't really care. In any case, it wouldn't be long before someone came to tell him how it all concluded. His time was very precious, and he had spent multiple afternoons working on the magic array. How could he still have time to be concerned about such a trivial matter? In the past few days, Lin Yun had remained in the Sage Tower in order to complete the magic array. The entire process took Lin Yun 3 days, but when he returned, Milan was seizing the items of the Gilded Rose. Over these past 3 days, Lin Yun had more or less completed the magic array. It was far from being perfect, but it was close. Nothing could be done about it, as the magic array was truly too special. It could be said that among the various magic conducting runes, the magic array was the most special one. This was a magic conducting rune whose complexity and details had been taken to the extreme. This was probably why magic conducting rune creation paradigm referred to that magic conducting rune as the discarded rune or worthless rune. It was all because the great mages of this era weren't able to perfect the magic conducting rune system. Even if someone had the magic array, they would only use it like it was an ordinary magic conducting rune. As a result, it would only be able to display less than 1/10 of its true might. It wasn't without reason that it was also known as the discarded rune or worthless rune. If someone wanted to truly display the magic array's might, they would have to continuously polish it. The magic array had nearly unlimited adaptability. Every meta magic and spell could perfectly blend in the magic array. What could happen when there were only 1 or 2 kinds used within? But when enough meta magics and spells were blended together, the magic array would have a fundamental change. It would become a magic conducting rune that would greatly increase the level of those meta magics and spells. It was precisely because of that property that the magic array was known as one of the strongest magic conducting runes when the magic civilization was at its peak. Chapter 59, Detention. This chapter is updated by Novels.pl. Lin Yun's first priority now was to continue perfecting the magic array. This was a task that would take time. For more than half of the following month, Lin Yun remained inside the alchemy laboratory, spending all his time polishing and improving the magic array. Spell after spell, meta magic after meta magic, all of it was gradually blended into the magic array system one by one. And as they were merged, the magic array kept changing all the time. The change was very small at the start, to the point that even Lin Yun couldn't perceive it. But ultimately, Lin Yun could tell that the might of these spells and metamagics greatly improved after merging with the magic array. Furthermore, as more and more spells and metamagics were infused, Lin Yun was able to try combining and arranging them. This was the most frightening part of the magic array. A complete magic array could be considered this world's most complicated and most detailed magic conducting rune, because the entire magic array was made up of spells and metamagics in a manner similar to a convoluted alchemy formula. Great mages with a properly completed magic array could combine these spells and metamagics as they pleased, and every proper combination would increase their might to a new level. Unfortunately, Lin Yun's current magic array was far from complete. And not only was there just a single magic array at the moment, but that array was also still very weak. He could only merge a few low-level spells and metamagics in right now. Lin Yun would only dare to try merging a powerful metamagic like Elemental Incarnation once he reached the 5th rank. For all great mages, the 5th rank was a very pivotal rank. When a great mage reached 5th rank, it meant that they had completed half of their magic conducting rune. Regardless of what kind of magic conducting rune they had, their might would be displayed by this point. This was true to an even greater degree for a great mage with a magic array. Such a 5th rank great mage could have 5 magic arrays, and not only would he be able to merge even more spells and metamagics, but he could also thoroughly stabilize the magic array system. From that moment, a great mage with magic arrays would have the power to be able to fight against a high mage. But becoming a 5th rank great mage was still something far in the distance for Lin Yun. Having this extremely complicated and detailed magic conducting rune was Lin Yun's fortune, but also his misfortune. The fortunate part was that once Lin Yun became a 5th rank great mage, he would indeed have the power to contend against a high mage. The unfortunate part was that the path Lin Yun would walk would be a lot more difficult than that of other great mages. The first magic array took Lin Yun more than half a month to complete. Over the course of this period, Lin Yun had merged 5 spells and 4 metamagics. Completing his first magic array with such a large amount of merging would have been seen as astonishing, even during the peak of the magic civilization. When Lin Yun finally left the alchemy laboratory, he was haggard, his face was pale, and his steps were dragging. It looked as if he would fall down if he wasn't careful, but his bloodshot eyes were shining frighteningly, and some faint runes could even be seen in his eyes. If Solomon were present at this time, he would inevitably notice that this young man's strength had undergone an earth-shattering change. The Lin Yun from half a month ago was on a totally different level from the current Lin Yun. This was due to the changes brought by the magic array system. Lin Yun had planned to look for the old butler once he came out from the alchemy laboratory to ask how the business was doing. But once he stepped outside, he noticed a small silhouette who had already been waiting at the doorway. "Ah, Boss Merlin, you finally came out." Remy looked like he had been waiting for quite a while. He seemed very sleepy, and when he saw Lin Yun, he raised his hands to massage his eyes before daring to greet Lin Yun. "Did you wait for a long time?" Noticing Remy's pallid appearance, Lin Yun couldn't help frowning a bit. The old butler had promised Lin Yun that once he entered the alchemy laboratory, no one would be allowed to disturb him. Even if a huge matter came about, it would have to wait until he came out himself. For Remy to wait at the door until he fell asleep meant that something had definitely happened to the Gilded Rose. "No, not long. Let's go, you can explain on the way." Lin Yun led Remy downstairs while he asked, "Did something happen to the shop?" "Yes, indeed. The goods we delivered to Edgerift were seized by the Viper Nest's people." "The Viper Nest?" Lin Yun frowned. Not long ago, Lin Yun had used a ghost potion to obtain the cooperation of the Silver Moon mercenaries, including a deal to purchase their products. Ever since then, the Silver Moon mercenaries had purchased quite a few alchemy products from the Gilded Rose. In the beginning, these alchemy items could be delivered to the Lion Monarch Main Street. But with the Silver Moon mercenaries departing on their campaign to Edgerift, the transport of the goods had to be done by the Gilded Rose. And in the end, a mere alchemy store was far from having the armed caravans that the former Flashing Gold Chamber of Commerce had. The 10 following shipments had used up a lot of manpower, yet they still were robbed twice. Fortunately, the Silver Moon mercenaries promptly provided support and no major loss was suffered. But those 2 robberies were only done by ordinary bandits. They were on the scale of a dozen people or so at most, and had been eliminated by the Silver Moon mercenaries. As for the more well-known forces of Thousand Sails City, no one dared to make a move. After all, this was the partner of the Silver Moon mercenaries. Ordinary forces wouldn't even have time to hide after offending such a group. So who would dare to recklessly make a rash move? Not to mention the Viper Nest. How could it be the Viper Nest? Honestly, Lin Yun couldn't understand. Was the Viper Nest's leader an idiot? How could they dare to seize the alchemy items that were purchased by the Silver Moon mercenaries? Aren't they afraid of Sasa bringing his great sword to their door? Oh right, Remy, when did this happen? Yesterday afternoon. The 5 alchemy apprentices that went along were also captured. Boss Pave just went out to request their release from the Viper Nest. All right, I understand. Chapter 60, Great Swordsman. This chapter is updated by novels.pl. Give me the list of the items that were shipped. Understood, Boss Merlin. Remy quickly fetched the requested list of items. Over a dozen kinds of products were indexed on it, most of which were medicines. After asking Remy, Lin Yun learned that this was due to the Silver Moon mercenaries' expedition in Edgerift not going too well. They had already suffered a lot of casualties while still outside of Edgerift, and thus, the recent orders consisted mostly of alchemy medicine. Alchemy medicine, Lin Yun understood a bit. This was probably trouble caused by the Hope Potion. If this was truly the case, then there was no need to worry, because Lin Yun was certain that the men of the Viper Nest would appear before him sooner or later. Lin Yun put down the list and didn't ask anything else. He waited calmly by himself in the Gilded Rose. As it turned out, Lin Yun didn't have to wait long at all. 1 hour later, Remy knocked at his door. Boss Merlin. Boss Merlin. Remy's worried voice came from behind the door. Lin Yun was surprisingly calm as he asked, "What? Someone came?" Yes. 2 people came. A mage and a fighter. They introduced themselves as members of the Viper Nest and they want to speak to the owner of the Gilded Rose. Good, I understand. Greet them first, I'll follow soon. Lin Yun changed into a clean, black robe before slowly walking toward the reception room. As he pushed the door open, he caught sight of the 2 waiting guests. One of them was a red-haired man of medium stature, and he seemed to be about 40 years old. His face was marred by a very long scar, which made him look quite fierce. He was wearing red-colored leather armor. On his right side, there was a great sword emitting faint magic fluctuations. It seemed to be a pretty decent weapon. With a glance, Lin Yun came to the conclusion that this was a great swordsman, and one that had recently advanced. Only the great swordsman who had recently advanced would be unable to completely control their aura. With an aura constantly leaking out, it was fairly easy to estimate one's strength. This was the same for a great mage who had recently crushed their mana whirlpool. But it wasn't the case for the current Lin Yun. Besides runes flashing in his eyes from time to time, people usually wouldn't be able to grasp Lin Yun's real strength through magic fluctuations, as he had much better control. This person who had recently advanced to become a great swordsman had a companion with him, and moreover, that person was an acquaintance. It was the 9th rank mage who had accompanied Fario to catch a thief in Lin Yun's house, along with a group from the Viper Nest. But they never ended up catching that thief, as the 9th rank mage himself was forced to follow Lin Yun inside and be questioned for a long time. Mage Larry, long time no see. Lin Yun greeted him very politely after entering the reception room. The 9th rank mage had originally been sitting there feeling very satisfied, resting his eyes while waiting for someone to come receive them. Thus, when he heard Lin Yun's voice, Larry immediately stiffened up. He opened his eyes in disbelief before instantly jumping up to his feet. Mage Merlin, ha ha, Mage Larry, we meet again. Ha ha, ha ha, yes, such a coincidence. Larry was smiling stiffly while thinking of slapping himself. Damn, how could I forget that the Gilded Rose is owned by that family? I actually came over like an idiot. He thought regretfully. This guy is a monster that was able to use meta magic a dozen times without even getting short of breath. When he thought back to that scene, the 9th rank mage couldn't help discreetly moving to hide behind the body of the fighter. What's going on? The great swordsman threw a strange glance at his companion, feeling rather puzzled. Mage Larry, who was famous for being vicious and merciless, was behaving a bit strangely. No, nothing. Larry raised his head and saw Lin Yun looking at him and immediately shrank back, unwilling to say another word. Fortunately, The great swordsman didn't take it to heart. If he didn't get an answer after asking, then that was that. He would move on with his own matters. His hands were on the table of the reception room as he kept leaking his aura, giving a somewhat oppressive feeling. "You are Maffer Merlin?" "Indeed, I am Maffer Merlin." Lin Yun nodded before sitting in front of the great swordsman. "Good, Merlin. I came today to ask you something. The Gilded Rose under your name has intruded 4 times on the territory of the Viper Nest. Are you trying to test the limits of the Viper Nest's tolerance?" The great swordsman's attitude was very aggressive, clearly showing how he was intent on getting the upper hand in the conversation. Someone less courageous might be scared by this display. Unfortunately for him, Lin Yun wasn't spineless. "Can I ask you something?" Lin Yun didn't blink as he looked closely at the great swordsman. "Who are you?" The great swordsman almost choked in surprise. "I asked you a question so fiercely, how could you ask something as trivial as that? Out of every answer you could have given, why would you ask my name?" "Okay, calm down, relax." The great swordsman counted to 10 in his mind, forcing himself to calm down before proudly answering. "I am Ryos." "Ryos? I've been looking forward to meeting you for a long time," Lin Yun drawled while yawning. Ryos' calmness was extinguished. "Maffer Merlin, don't interrupt me. I came today to ask you why your flashing gold Chamber of Commerce's caravan intruded on the Viper Nest's territory 4 times. Are you trying to provoke the Viper Nest?" "Absolutely not." "That's good." Ryos' expression eased up slightly. Although this Maffer Merlin's attitude was dislikable, it seemed that he fortunately knew of the fearsomeness of the Viper Nest. Ryos coughed to clear his throat before putting his hands on the table once more, while wearing a lofty expression. He demanded, "Our Viper Nest needs an explanation." "What explanation?" "You should think about what kind of explanation you should show us." "You are asking for compensation?" "HMPF." Ryos snorted coldly, but he inwardly rejoiced. "It seems like I have a talent for negotiations." With just a simple scare, this fellow became sincere. "Wait until I get the Hope Potion formula, Boss House will definitely reward me. It's a pity that this idiot Larry will get a share of my credit." "Oh right, speaking of Larry Ryos thought it was rather strange. How come Larry started acting all weird ever since Maffer Merlin appeared? He seems like a mouse meeting a cat